Hello, everyone. Welcome to a guided tour of the National Spatial Reference System with NOAA's National Geodetic Survey. Happy to have you all here. While we get going here, sorry, we're having a little bit of, thank you for bearing with us a little bit as we try out this new platform this year and get rolling on these different virtual presentations. Just a few reminders, please use the Q&A feature that you see on the right side of the screen to ask questions during the session. And we'll relay those to the presenters. They can either respond to them live if there's time, or we can respond to them in the online system. The chat feature is there too, and will be open until the end of the session. But be aware that any questions you ask in the chat may not be answered. So please use the Q&A. All right, so this is going to be a great session. I don't want to waste too much of your time. We have two great speakers today. We have Lynda Bell, who is the new Southwest Regional Geodetic Advisor with NOAA's National Geodetic Survey. So she's the liaison between NGS and the public. And she also does academic, private sector customers, and government sector. So her region is Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. If some of you remember Bill Stone, Lynda is taking his place. Bill retired last year. So Lynda will be up first, and then following Lynda will also be Michael Dennis, who I think probably doesn't need much of an introduction. Most of you know Michael. He's a geodesist also at NOAA's National Geodetic Survey, where he is in charge of the State Plane Coordinate System for the 2022 project and is involved in a variety of other efforts with NGS, and they're going to talk to you about that today. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing here and turn this over to Lynda to share her screen. It's all yours, Lynda. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Jamie. Let me get things up here. I'll be right with you.
Lynda, are you able to share your screen?
I'm trying. Let's see here. It's not letting me click on share.
Should be available to you.
Yes. Okay, here we go. Sorry about the delay.
Lynda, we're not seeing your presentation.
Okay, one more time.
Okay, we're still seeing your whole desktop with your Zoom and.
Are you seeing my screen?
There we go. You're good.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, Michael and I are going to be presenting this tour in two parts. So I will be part one, and we're basically just going to guide you through where we are and what it is. What is the National Spatial Reference System? Between Michael and I, we'll be taking you from the beginning, which is sort of the background, a little bit of NGS history, all the way to where we are today with the National Spatial Reference System developments. Just to start out with, and I'll define what the National Spatial Reference System is a couple of times through my presentation, just to sort of clarify where we are. And some of you may be very familiar with this, and others it may be new. So I'm giving a little background just so we're all together on the same page. NOAA's National Geodetic Survey defines, maintains, and provides access to the National Spatial Reference System. In this part of the talk, we're going to overview NGS products and services and how they'll change as part of NSRS modernization. A little bit about me. Jamie already shared that I am your new Southwest Regional Geodetic Advisor for NGS. I've also had the great privilege to serve several other federal agencies in the geospatial community, working as a geophysicist and a senior scientist at NASA's Goddard Space Flight Center in Greenbelt, Maryland, and as the sea level specialist at the National Park Service headquarters in Fort Collins, Colorado. Here's some of my contact information. This slideshow will be published for all of you, so please do reach out to me. I'm here to support you in any way that I can, any questions I can answer, connections I can provide to NGS. Here's my email and phone number, and I'm happy and excited to hear from you. So before we begin into the NSRS, I just wanted to give a little background if you're not familiar with what the NGS Regional Advisor Program is. By definition, I'm a federal employee of NOAA's National Geodetic Survey. I serve as a liaison between NGS and its public, academic, and private sector constituents who are managing the geodetic component of geospatial activities tied to the NSRS in your region. This map shows the different regions that are across the US. Mine is the Southwest, and that includes, as Jamie said, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. So you can see that this is a fairly new program, actually. Just in the last 5 years to 6, we've had the Regional Advisor Program. Before that, it was the State Advisor Program. So Bill Stone, who I'm just very proud and thrilled to get to continue his great work. He started as the New Mexico State Advisor, and actually was one of the very first regional advisor in the program for NGS. So he was part of sort of spearheading and developing what the regional advisor program is today. And we're continuing to grow and develop and change as new advisors like myself come into the fold. We've got, I think there's at least 3 of us that have come in the last year to year and a half. Over on the right are just a couple of pictures of regional advisors in action, one of which was the top photo there is Chopo Canyon that Bill Stone was just had a great time being part of this sort of astroarchaeological survey. And below that, we have Ed Carlson from the Pacific region. And he is out actually working on survey and teaching in that photo. And those are some examples of things we do. Sometimes we get to join a survey, which is always exciting for us. Sometimes we advise, we often teach, we train. We also have a percentage of our position where we are, it's almost 40-ish% of our position is supporting program development at NGS headquarters. So we're actually part of some of the new tools that are being developed. We get to have a part in all of that, as well as the other percentage of our job is to serve our region. And already in the seat, I've had a chance to work with people on railroad abandonment projects and improving their Opus Share solution so that we can publish control with NGS. Lots of different things can happen in the region that need our attention, and we're here for support on all of those. Some of the services in the region that Bill provided, and I will continue to provide, is to connect you and help you with any CORS, continuously operating reference station data that you're using. Again, we are trainers and supporters for your use of our online positioning user service, or Opus projects. We are also here to help with providing support from NGS for your questions about passive control, geode models, transformation tools, and also helping you publish and share survey results. I just had good news this morning in my inbox that a private contractor that's been working at the Navajo Nation with the Army Corps, we've been working with our Opus team and him to get his data up to the place where he can publish with NGS, and just got to publish 14 new control points in the Navajo Nation as of this morning. So that's always exciting for us to get to help you and work with that. So please contact us and let us know how we can help you. And then I just had to provide a little quote from Bill's letter to me when I joined in the position, and he said, "Good luck and have fun. It's a fantastic region." So I just wanted to send a little hello to you from Bill. He loved his work here. He loves serving you guys, and he's been fantastic about just sharing with me his ideas and thoughts and what he loves about this region. So Bill's still here, available for me to reach out to. If there's previous things you've worked on with Bill that I need to know about, let me know. And Bill's here still to support and help as well. Thank you so much. And then finally, these are some projects that were happening really during Bill's time and still are, and we're growing. So some of the activities he listed in his last presentation actually to AGIC a couple of years ago. And now that I'm starting working on these projects myself, I see we're still active in all these areas here in the region, and we're growing. So everything from installing core stations, we've got a new one coming in right now at Carlsbad Caverns, which is exciting. Helping develop our real-time GNSS networks across the region, height modernization, LiDAR survey control. The survey I just mentioned at the Navajo Nation was in fact ground control to support an airborne LiDAR survey flown by the Army Corps. So really improving mapping there in the nation. Some science monitoring, of course, is a big thing here in Arizona. Mark preservation, the GPS on benchmark data collection project, which I think is so much fun because it can really involve everyone from citizens who do geocaching to professionals, and it just really helps us to, check our database and grow our database to know what we've got out there for benchmarks. And then, of course, new datums preparation. Your work helps us with that, and we're going to talk a lot more about that in our talk today. Just real quick, just a clear snapshot of what our mission is. It really is all about the NSRS right now. So defining, maintaining, and providing access to the NSRS is NGS's mission. We do this to meet our nation's economic, social, and environmental needs. And then just a little quick fun snapshot of NGS history. I know that a lot of you that are professional surveyors and been working for years in the field know a little bit about, sort of the fun history of surveying, but this is a little bit specific about NGS in particular. The National Geodetic Survey was established as the Survey of the Coast by President Thomas Jefferson in 1807. Today's NGS is part of NOAA's National Ocean Service. Classical pre-GPS surveyors measured angles and distances with what we would think of today as very rudimentary equipment. Yet these pioneers developed highly accurate equipment in their time and techniques we still use today in both cadastral and geodetic surveying. The evolution of tools used to make extremely accurate distance measurements has changed significantly from steel bars used in the 1800s to the highly accurate equipment we use today. Now we have powerful tools at our fingertips in the geospatial community, such as an international suite of satellites, the GNSS, available for global positioning, satellite altimetric data from NASA and NOAA to measure Earth's surfaces from atmosphere to sea to land to ice, and both airborne and terrestrial LiDAR to measure topography to improve digital elevation models. I'm not going to go over this whole timeline because we have a lot to cover today, but it's here for you to look at later. It's just fun. It's sort of fun facts about the organizational milestones coming all the way up to in 2020, the 50th anniversary of NOAA, as well as scientific milestones, starting with the first field work completed triangulation covering the New York City area in 1816 to now where we are today. So now I'm going to go in a little bit into what we actually do. Again, the mission of our survey is to define, maintain, and provide access to the NSRS. The NSRS provides a consistent coordinate system that defines latitude, longitude, height, scale, gravity, and orientation through the United States and its territories. We provide a platform for acquiring, utilizing, and publishing GNSS and GPS data. remote sensing tools. We support land surveying, growing the field of geodesy, training and education, and datums and transformations. And we'll talk again in a lot more detail about all of these. NGS Products and Services. Sorry, just wanted to pull one thing up over here. Some of the things that we're going to talk again in more detail here that we provide are a vertical datum transformation tool, the GravD project, which is gravity for the redefinition of the American vertical datum. We provide emergency response imagery, ecosystem and climate operations, developing the NSRS, CORS, OPUS, airport survey, shoreline mapping, and GPS satellite orbits. I just wanted to say just a little quick something about a few of these, though again we'll go into detail. The vertical datum transformation tool is designed to transform coordinates between ellipsoid, orthometric, and tidal vertical datums. I wanted to start to sort of lay the groundwork for some of the detail that Michael's going to be providing, and really diving into the geodesy to understand what some of these tools actually are. The GravD project collects gravity data used to help improve future geoid models and ultimately to replace the NAVD88. Our emergency response imagery, this is where we post event imagery and make it quickly available online to support emergency response efforts. In ecosystem and climate operations, we provide geodetic tools and guidelines, and they're adapted to help manage, protect, and restore ecosystems. A great example of this is my previous position with the National Park Service as their sea level specialist. Because I come from a background of geodetic surveying and I'm a geodesist, I was often working with our park superintendents right on the ground and helping bringing in more geodetic control, so that things like when we were doing set platforms out in the marsh, say in Florida, at Timucuan Preserve, we were noticing there was a need to tie those experiments into a better geodetic control. So that whole piece of how we respond to emergencies, how we support ecosystem and climate operations, manage, protect, and restore ecosystems, the real underpinning, the real backbone of all that work is our work like we do here at NGS and like all of you do out there in the field. Okay, I want to continue on. So now we're going to start to dive in a little bit more to the geodesy itself. This picture that's, I hope, is animated is showing here in the left how, as the Earth is rotating and as we're within this configuration of GNSS satellites, that we have different views of that set of satellites as our surveys continue on. And so one of the things in training I've been working with some folks already is, when you set up a survey, how do you plan your survey in such a way that you can utilize this three-dimensional view of the cadre of satellites that we have out there? So historically, we just had the global positioning satellites. And when I was a surveyor back in the day, working for NASA, I think we only had, like, not to date myself, but like 12 to 20 satellites available at a time at most. And now we have this whole international array that we can tap into for much more highly accurate positioning. NGS supports surveyors and others with high accuracy GNSS data, ground control marks, models and tools, guidelines, and tutorials. The GNSS tools that we provide are our online positioning user service, where you can tie your GPS observations to US and international frames. You can look up antenna biases for high accuracy data processing and calibrate antenna data. Transformation tools, we have our Geodetic toolkit where we can help you transform data between reference frames and datums. We provide geoid models, converting your GPS heights to orthometric, like NAVD88, and our orbits, so that you can take a look at your international GNSS orbit products here at NGS as well. One of the things I'm seeing that we most commonly are working with our folks in our region, our professionals, are using folks who are interested in using our online positioning user service, or OPUS. What is OPUS? NOAA's online positioning user service provides free access to high accuracy NSRS coordinates. OPUS uses software which computes coordinates using the NOAA CORS network. What is the CORS network? This is our network of continuously operating reference stations. Here you can get GNSS data files, station coordinates, and velocities from this nationwide array of tracking stations, which are used for survey processing and geophysical research. As accuracy and precision of geospatial data increases, it's becoming more important to manage our data carefully and use consistent reference frames. NGS defines datums as the foundation for positioning for the United States and territories. NGS also provides transformation tools to help align data and to transform coordinates between other datums and projections. And a lot of the information that I'm sharing with you today, I really pulled right from our website. So of the tools and the links that we're providing in these talks today, you can dive in and read a lot more about each one of these things. I'm just giving a good overview, but this is all really the meat of what's on the geodesy.noaa.gov site. So I encourage you to get in there and see what we've got. There's a lot of great stuff, everything from documentation and standards to the tools themselves available for you to use. So let's take a look now at the components that are in the National Spatial Reference System. Again, the definition of the NSRS is a consistent coordinate system that defines latitude, longitude, height, scale, gravity, orientation, and shoreline throughout the United States, and is designed to meet our nation's economic, social, and environmental needs. Some of these components that we take a look at inside the tools that we have for you are, I think, one of the most important ones, of course, is the geodetic positional coordinates. These are latitude, longitude, and ellipsoid and orthometric heights in the official US datums. Currently, the North American datum of 1983, NAD 83, and the North American datum of 1980, vertical datum of 88, NAVD 88. We also provide a computation of geopotential heights and altitude as reference to Earth's mean sea level, used to define the reference surface of the Earth's geoid, or the modeled sea level surface. We can also compute, from the GravD project, we can compute better estimates of the acceleration of gravity, and we use this to improve our geoid models. Also inside these tools, we can better understand the deflection of the vertical, also known as the astrogeodetic deflection, and how far the gravity direction at a given point of interest is rotated by local mass anomalies such as nearby mountains. So a lot of the work that's being put into the modernization of the NSRS, which Michael's really going to dive into in his talk, is what I see as setting a geodetic standard. And so in my career, I've had this great privilege of really starting in the early years of what we really understood to be what we call now geodetic surveying. What is geodesy? And I worked as an intern at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, and I'm going to actually show you a video of my first boss, my favorite person in the world at NASA Goddard, Dr. Chopo, who was one of the inventors of the Very Low Baseline Interferometer. He and Tom Clark were my first two bosses at NASA. So as a young kid, intern, undergrad, coming in and learning about all of this, I got to study under the folks that were just developing how we interface all of these geodetic tools together to create a geodetic standard that we have today. For 200 years, NGS and its predecessor agencies have collaborated with public and private organizations to establish reference stations at precisely determined locations. More recently, NGS has fostered a network of CORS stations where each CORS includes a highly accurate receiver that continuously collects radio signals broadcast by the GNSS satellites, forming a network used to accurately position other points of interest. Some of the NGS transformation tools and data sets that support the NSRS are the NCAT, or the NGS Coordinate Conversion and Transformation Tool, where we convert between different coordinate systems and or transform between different datums. VDatum converts elevation data from various sources into a common reference system. HTDP, or Horizontal Time-Dependent Positioning Utility, transforms positions across time in spatial reference frames. The State Plane Coordinate System, which Michael's our lead on and will tell us more about as well today, provides coordinates on a flat grid for easy computation. And the data sets that come from this are Opus Share, NGS Data Explorer Geodetic Control, survey mark data sheets, antenna calibration data, remote sensing data, storm imagery, coastal imagery, shoreline data explorers, orthomosaics, LIDAR, aeronautical data, gravity data, and orbit data. NSRS really utilizes this need for precise positioning. And so I'm going to slip a little bit from my NGS hat to my former NASA hat for a minute and just celebrate where we are, to be honest. I mean, when I started out at Goddard, we had SLR, VLBI. We were starting to use GPS to understand what was happening on the ground around these important VLBI and SLR stations. We had DORIS data we were looking at. We were just starting to get into satellite altimetry, and I went back to Goddard as a consultant 15 years after I was an intern, and I got to actually look at what was then almost 15 years of altimetric data that we had just started to look at. So really mapping surface with altimetry. I've done some studies where we've looked at how do you combine all of this data together, and then you get into this massive question of reference frame and the need to be precise in your positioning data. And a lot of these standards are being addressed now in documentation that we have in the International Association of Geodesy, and I've included a hot link to that site here so that you can take a look at what's happening at the international level, because obviously if we're acquiring data from space and these platforms are being launched from various countries around the globe, then we need to have an international effort in how we look at that data and how we set these standards in geodesy.
Hey, Lynda, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's like 2 minutes. We got to have room for Michael to get in. So.
Okay, I'm at the very end, so I'm just going to play this quick 2-minute video and wrap it up.
Great, thanks.
Yep, and this is a profile of my former boss, Dr. Chopo, and what's now called the Space Geodesy Project at NASA.
My name is Chopo. My primary job these days seems to be in charge of NASA's Geodetic VLBI program. When NASA started in this area of space geodesy using VLBI, there were different questions that were really interesting to answer. For example, whether plates like the North American plate in Europe, the continents were actually moving. The questions now are fundamental metrics, so that from the space geodesy measurements, we can develop a very precise terrestrial reference frame, the ability to know on the Earth from one place to another and from one time to another how things are related up, down, east, west, north, south. And this is very important for measurements which are small in nature, but take some time to measure properly, like what happens with the sea level rise and whether it's uniform over the whole globe or not. VLBI and the other techniques are working to make improvements to make these types of fundamental measurements to allow other sciences to be done more accurately and to make interpretation more secure.
Okay, I'm going to wrap up now and just lead into where we're going next, which is all about NSRS modernization. And Michael Dennis is going to be sharing with us about that. Just quickly, we've been working over the last 10 plus years to remove inaccuracies in the existing datums of the US. By tracking the dynamic nature of the Earth and giving users tools to account for it, NGS will provide a new National Spatial Reference System that is semi-dynamic. By fully embracing the benefits of GNSS as the positioning tool of today and of the future, NGS will effectively link the replacements for NAD83 and NAVD88 through a geocentric reference frame and gravimetric geoid model. Whether users choose to work in a fully dynamic or semi-dynamic frame, NGS will provide the tools for transforming between them. We are seeking to engage the entire geospatial community to make the transition to new datums as seamless as possible by supporting the current datum while building the new datum. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynda. We're going to switch now over to Michael, and we're getting in our times here. So I apologize to you attendees that the chat is not working, but please be sure to post your questions in the Q&A. We're having a little technical issues with the chat, but I'm going to turn it right over to Michael since we're running short on time. Go for it, Michael.
All right, thank you. Can you hear me all right and see my title slide?
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thanks. And thank you, Lynda. Lynda was trying to cover a lot of stuff, and NGS does do a lot. So I'm going to try to add a little bit to that and maybe make it a little more Arizona specific. And I also want to lead off with where she ended it. And it was about a road forward, in this case, the road forward for NSRS modernization. And I'll just dive right in. When NGS says NSRS modernization, that means we're going to update all the coordinates. They're all going to change. Improve NGS products and services. Simplify user contributions to making the NSRS. And it's all about making the NSRS more accurate, more accessible, and more efficient. We're not changing it just because it's fun to change things. We're trying to make it better. And for this presentation, because there's not a lot of time, I'm going to focus in sort of a high-level way on the updating of the coordinates. To do that, let's talk about the Earth, the whole Earth. Now, this is not quite the whole Earth, but a big chunk of it. You just saw in Lynda's presentation, talking about plate tectonics. Things are moving. The planet is divided in about 52 tectonic plates, depending who's counting. And here you see some here. Now, this is not new. We've known about plate tectonics for a long time. In fact, the North American datum of 1983 was originally intended to, if you will, move with the North American tectonic plate. While it was rotating, the coordinates would move with it, so they didn't appear to change much with time. That was the intent since early on when it was first created, or shortly thereafter. Later on, though, the United States isn't just on North America, right? We have Hawaii, for example, on the Pacific plate, and we have territories of Guam and the Northern Mariana Islands on the Mariana plate, and American Samoa too on the Pacific plate. There are different tectonic plates, so NGS makes those, has these 3 NAD 83 frames. And it's a little bit weird because they're all called North American datum. It's clearly not North America, but we sort of just inherited that name. So this is the situation right now. Even though there's all this newfangled stuff going on, it's been this way for a while. We are aware of tectonic motion and we try to handle it so that your coordinates are stable over time. And the same thing's going to happen in the future, only we're going to do it better. Look, I just changed the slide. It looks exactly the same, except the words change and the abbreviations change. Now I've got the North America, Pacific, and Mariana plates model, same plates, but new names. North American Terrestrial Reference Frame of 2022, Pacific Terrestrial Reference Frame of 2022, and Mariana Terrestrial Reference Frame of 2022. Woo, say that fast. So, we've got this new name, terrestrial reference frame, instead of datum, but it's the same sort of idea. So it's going to be very, very similar, only modeled much better. And in addition, we're going to handle one more tectonic plate, and that's the Caribbean. For the Caribbean terrestrial reference frame of 2022. And there we have 4 different terrestrial reference frames for the future. Okay, that's how we're going to do it, and a bunch of other things that go along with it. I'll show you more in a bit. So that's for the so-called horizontal part, but also there's a height component 2 that we express as ellipsoid heights, for example. But then there's elevations or orthometric heights. That gets a lot more intense for the existing National Spatial Reference System. For the North American and the Caribbean, we have North American vertical datum of 1988, International Great Lakes datum of 1985. We have one for Puerto Rico. We have one for the Virgin Islands, right? There's 4 right there, but it doesn't stop there. We have in the Pacific 3 more vertical datums for Guam, Northern Mariana, and American Samoa. So 7 different current vertical datums right now. And that's because the way we establish vertical control, it's not satellite based. So it's all very local. That's why you need different ones for different islands. Well, we really have 6 because one of them died in an earthquake a few years ago, American Samoa vertical datum. And actually it shows something else. Because of the way we establish things historically, they're vulnerable to things like earthquakes. So American Samoa datum is not usable anymore because of a large earthquake there. So that's the one thing that will change going the other way. There will be less. There's really going to be just 1 vertical datum for the National Spatial Reference System, and that's the North American Pacific geopotential datum of 2022. There's another mouthful. Now it's called a geopotential datum instead of a vertical datum. More on that in a second. You see here that what I'm showing here is the geoid model we're going to use for that to help you get elevations or orthometric heights from GNSS. That covers a quarter of the planet, but it's still not quite enough. So we need little ones over one in the Mariana Islands and one in American Samoa. And so it's going to include geoid model, surface gravity model, deflection of vertical model, and how those models change over time. Because of all those other parts to it about gravity and the magnitude and the direction of gravity, that's what those are for, it has that name, geopotential datum, rather than just vertical datum. Now let's step in closer to Arizona. Let's look at what's going to happen here. So I'm going to try to show you here how things are going to change in our neck of the woods. And that's what this map is showing right here, which is not that interesting. It's all pretty much one color, except you see there's some different colors here in northern Baja and over here in California. Let me put some contours on here to give you a better idea about the change. So here's a 4.5 foot contour. This is a change of 4.5 feet from North American datum in 1983 as it is at EPIC 2010.0, which is January 1st, 2010, to how it's going to be in NatRef 2022 at EPIC 2020.0. So you see the changes, you see the contours are very irregular. What you're seeing over here, all these messy contours, are earthquakes. One is the Elmira Cucapah earthquake from April 2010. The other is a Ridgecrest earthquake from July 2019. Because they happen in that 10-year time span between the beginning of 2010 and end of 2019, they have to be part of the transformation, if you will, or the change that goes along from NAT 83 to NatRef 2022. So yes, we do take into account and model earthquakes as part of the spatial reference system, and have for a long time. So that's the horizontal part. There's a height part, the ellipsoidal height part. And the same sort of thing. You see some difference in colors on here. And again, I'll put contours on. You're seeing it's all going to decrease. The ellipsoid height's going to decrease. Here's -3 feet in southeastern Arizona, -2.5 feet in northwestern Arizona. And again, you see the effects of the earthquakes on here, Ridgecrest and Elmira Cucapah earthquakes. So very much that. Now, most people are interested more in elevations or orthometric heights than they are ellipsoid heights for a variety of reasons, like determining where water will flow. So here's the changes that are going to occur from going from NAVD 88 to NAPGD 2022. And same sort of thing, they're all negative, but it's the opposite trend. They're getting more negative to the northwest, whereas they were getting more negative to the southeast on ellipsoid heights. But the same sort of thing, the orthometric heights or elevations will decrease when we go to the new datum. Y'all have heard of shake and bake, right? Well, we have a phrase we use for this change to the new datums. We call it shift and drift. Shift happens. Sudden shift, just like I showed you in those previous 3 maps, all the coordinates are going to suddenly change by the magnitude shown on here when we go from NAT 83 and NAVD 88 to the new datums, right? A sudden shift in coordinates at EPIC 2020.0. That's the EPIC date they'll first be published at. But there's also a continuous drift due to crustal motion. Now, The points are supposed to move with the tectonic plate as it rotates to minimize that, but that doesn't capture all the motion, obviously, especially when we get near the plate boundaries like we are being next to California. So the whole idea here is not just to make it as complicated as we possibly can, it's actually to minimize a change in coordinates with time so that the time change effect is reduced, but it's still there. So we also give the ability to determine coordinates at any time, right? So if you have an epoch that your data's at, you can keep using that epoch for a long time afterward. It makes things stable. It's all pretty complicated. Life is complicated. The world is complicated. This giant Earth that we're on, right? It's dynamic. I mean, it's not just rotating in space, but things are moving around everywhere. It's pretty complicated, right? But it's not the only model of the Earth. There are alternative models out there. Here's one I kind of like, a flat Earth model. You see it here on the back of these elephants who are riding on top of a giant turtle flying through space, I guess. But anyway, here's an alternative model, a flat Earth model. It has some appeal, I have to admit. And to help with that, NGS is also going to have flat Earth model for the future. And that's the state plane coordinate system of 2022. It's reference to those terrestrial reference frames that we just talked about. And, you know, we already have state plane now. So it's uses the same reference ellipsoid as existing state plane and the same 3 projection types as existing state plane. Lambert conformal conic, transverse Mercator, and oblique Mercator. And all 3 of those projection types will be used in Arizona, as a matter of fact, for state plane 2022. Now, the overall idea with this is the main thing that differentiates it from existing state plane is that we're going to reduce what's called linear distortion of the topographic surface. That just means that the map projection distance is as close as we possibly can make it to what you'd actually measure on the ground. I'll just leave it at that. The other things to talk about here are this idea of zone layers, the status of the zone designs, and the timing of it all. Here's a map showing 3 different categories of the number of layers that different states will have. You'll see that some states only have 1 layer, a statewide zone. Every state has a statewide zone. Some will have 2 layers, and some, including Arizona, will have 3 layers, right? So that's the way it's going to play out. And I'll get into that just a little bit more, but it's going to vary throughout the United States. The ones with 3 layers tend to be in the Western United States, but not totally. Not totally. So there's going to be a lot of zones. So right now there's 125 zones in existing state plane. NGS is designing 159 zones for state plane 2022, and every state will get a statewide zone. So there's 54 of those because there's that includes territories too, not just states. But stakeholders can also design their own zones to complement the statewide zones, and 28 states have designed over 800 of those so far. So there's 971 zones for 56 states and territories. That's how it stands right now. That number almost certainly will decrease at least a little bit, but it will not increase. That much we know now. Now, to give you an idea, so who wins the competition for the largest number of zones? I'm a little, well, Utah does, just barely beats Ohio, and it's just kind of crazy. But Arizona's no slouch with a lot of zones. Whether that's good or bad is the subject of debate. You do notice on here that there's a few states, 18 states that have only 1 zone, whereas we have a large number of zones in several states. It varies quite a bit. And there's 2 other special things on here. In fact, they're called special use zones. There's a zone for the Navajo Nation and a zone for the Gulf of Mexico. Those zones are in more than 1 state. That's why they're in their own special category. Now, the situation for Arizona. Most of you, but maybe not all of you, know that Arizona's been working really hard on designing their own zones, right? And that effort was led by Brian Fisher and Jack Avis as part of an AGIC work group for State Plane 2022. And they worked hard on it and actually did a really bang up job. And we'll look at that a little bit here. And the way it's going to be is 3 zone layers. Like I said, every state gets a statewide zone. Arizona's no exception, which is great for, say, statewide GIS. But there's also going to be a layer of it looks like maybe 43 zones covering the entire state, like a quilt. Every part of the state's covered. But then there's also going to be a layer of, it looks like maybe 19 zones that partially covers the state. And just get to that here in a minute. It's not finalized yet, so the number of zones and the extent of the zones may change a little bit, but the projection parameters themselves probably won't change or not hardly change at all. So here's a map showing the layout as it exists for the 43 zones that cover the entire state. It is a lot of zones, especially since there's only 3 right now, right, for State Plane 83. But this has been taken through the user community pretty extensively. So something similar to this is probably how it's going to shake out, almost certainly how it's going to shake out. There might be a few less, and some of these zone extents might get simplified and cleaned up, but this is what you can expect to have for State Plane 2022 as the so-called complete coverage layer. There's also going to be layers that cover special areas in the state that couldn't be handled in that complete coverage layer. For example, there's 4 different zones along the Grand Canyon for the bottom of the Grand Canyon. There's a long zone for the Central Arizona project, and a few others scattered around for like Mount Lemmon, for example, a zone for high up on the mountains, things like that. So those are also going to be part of the system for State Plane 2022. Now about the timing of it all. Our intent, and I'm pretty darn sure we're going to do it, is finalize everything next year, 2022. And other things too. That means providing all the definitions in machine readable format so that software vendors can easily ingest those designs. And of course, have a report, maybe, and we have to modify some of the NGS algorithms, things like that. So all those things should happen in 2022. However, they won't get released in 2022. They won't be released until after the modernized NSRS is done. And that's likely after, says they're likely after 2025. And you say, likely after 2025? Seriously? After making us meet all these deadlines for State Plane, you're going to make us wait? After all that work, people don't want to wait. They want to use their State Plane now, right? I understand. I totally understand. So people want to use it now, and I guess the good news is you can if you want. So it's possible. So several states are in this category. They've designed these things. They worked hard. They got them done, and they will work with NAD 83 because it's the same reference ellipsoid, so nearly identical performance. So people could start using them now, but they'd be referenced to NAD 83, not to NatRep 2022. So even though they can be used, they won't become part of State Plane 83. They will not be supported in NGS Products and Services, but people can still use them, just like they use their own custom coordinate systems now. However, I beseech you, if you're planning to do this, make sure to change the grid origins by a large amount, say by 10,000 meters or whatever, from what they are going to be for State Plane 2022, so you don't mix them up later on, right? Because that will be a source of confusion. So people that do want to use it, we can't stop you, but do yourself a favor and at least change those origins. Okay, getting to the end here. Just to summarize, new quote unquote datums in State Plane. So we talked about these things called reference frames and geopotential or vertical datum. So the reference frame you can think of as the purely geometric side, and the most common way of people talk about it is as latitude, longitude, and ellipsoid height. The geopotential datum has a bunch of stuff to do with gravity, but the part most people are interested in their day-to-day work is orthometric heights or elevations. So those are how those things are related. And just to remind you, in Arizona, you can expect horizontal change in latitude and longitude of 4 to 5 feet. Ellipsoid height changes. Ellipsoid heights will decrease by about 2 to 3 feet, and elevations will decrease by about 1 to 2 feet. Those are the changes in those quantities. Now, State Plane coordinates are going to change by thousands of meters, some are many, many thousands. So it'll be totally different values than what you have in State Plane 83. And speaking of State Plane, just a reminder, there's going to be 3 zone layers, about 60. I showed 65 on one slide, 63 on another slide. It's going to be right around in there, it looks like. And it'll be implemented along with modernized NSRS, as I said. Though, if you want to start using it sooner, you can. Just know that NGS will not support it in our products and services, but you can still use it. And as a reminder, these can be changed in the future. We're trying to set up in a way that it's not frozen, right? So people can make modifications. There'll be a process to do that. So that means changing, adding, removing zones later on after it's released, after it's rolled out after 2025. So that's about it. What I'd like to do is wrap up by encouraging you, if you want to know more, to go to our website, which is geodesy.noaa.gov, and there's a bunch of information on there. If you want to know more about the new datums, there's a new datum button right there. State Plane doesn't get its own button, but it does have a little spot right here that you can click on if you want to learn more. And with that, I am done.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Lynda. Oh, wow, you finished. Wow, you went right through there pretty quick.
I was working hard, maybe too hard.
Okay, so since our chat is not working, but I believe the Q&A is, because a few things came in. If you guys have questions, and if you listening on here have questions, please put those in the Q&A, and we can get those to Lynda and Michael here to respond. Although there was a question in there, and I think it was answered. They were talking about how well do the Arizona, the new SPCS zones line up with counties, and I believe you had a map in there that answered that question after it came in. So I don't know if you want to just flip to that slide real quick so people can take a gander at it again.
Sure, I can do that. Let me make sure I be careful.
Or if there's any comment you want to do on that particular question about.
Yeah, well, I know from the work that was done by the State Plane Work Group that the initial effort was to try to align with county boundaries. But of course, in Arizona, it's difficult. Our counties are very large and there's a tremendous amount of topographic relief. So even though that was an initial endeavor, obviously you can see from this map that is not what occurred in most places. In some places, yes. And actually, there might be some effort to try to get them aligned a little bit better with the county boundaries before it's finalized. So yeah, we know that people like to have that.
Okay, great. Okay, I appreciate this because that that our attendees are, there's some that aren't questions, which is okay. Since our chat's not working, it's okay to put accolades in here for our presenters. So there are a few of those. We have not a question, but a great job to you both. Very fascinating presentations. And a thank you to Dr. Dennis on there. And someone also wanted to know if there is a place where they can grab a vector of that map.
Oh, the map that's up right now?
Yes.
If someone wants the actual data set that was used to make this, I can certainly provide it. That's not a problem. It's all ArcGIS and it's all shape files probably. So yeah, I think everything's shape files, so I can easily share. Just contact me.
Okay, great. And we have another question here for Michael. For those agencies with low distortion projections like Cochise County, do you recommend staying with the LDP or moving to the nearest SPCS 2022 zone?
So regarding Cochise County, just to make sure everyone knows, Cochise County has their own coordinate system for that county. And you see on the map here that the county actually is in 2 different zones for State Plane 2022, but there is a zone just for the county right now. It does have quite a bit of distortion, especially on the northwest side, but they use it for the whole county anyway. I'm always going to recommend that you move to the most modern stuff. So that would be the ideal case. It's likely that you probably get very good distortion, even if you take. So one thing I should say real quick, I don't want to burn up all my time. These are polygons, right? It's not against the law to work outside the polygon. So you could be in one zone and go outside that boundary and continue working if it meets your needs. So in the case of, say, Cochise County, they might decide that Douglas zone works well enough for their purposes to use it for the whole county. And we'll look at maybe trying to extend that a little bit and see what we can do to make that more inviting for that purpose. And of course, you could just split the county and have 2 zones, but I know that people like to have a single geometry. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, I think that answered the question well. I'm not seeing more, but I do think that we should reiterate that it's not against the law to work outside the polygon. That is a, do you have bumper stickers for that?
No, but I should make some for sure.
Or maybe t-shirts. Okay, so I'm looking a couple more accolades in here. And of course the chat is still not working, even though it's telling me that's going to close in 5 more minutes. I think that's it. If Lynda or Michael, if you have anything you'd like to add, I'm going to share my closing screen with some last minute reminders.
Did you want me to stop sharing?
I have the power to do that.
I know you do, so I thought I was just being nice. Gus, I guess I talked faster than I needed to, but I guess that's all right.
Oh, that was great. So,
Well, thank you all for hosting us. It was great to be here with you.
thanks, Lynda.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you to our presenters. And I'm sure there will be a rousing applause right now if we're in person. And so hopefully we'll get to do that again soon next year and see everybody in Prescott. But since we're not, for now, I'm going to, oops, I'm still on my welcome slide. I want to thank everybody for attending. Please, if you complete the session survey, which you'll find over to the right of your screen, you'll see a survey underneath the Q&A button. And talk about the quality of the, you know, the information that was presented and not the technical issues of the chat, please. Anyways, thank you guys for understanding everything. Again, there will be a recording of this session available within, basically, it's really in about 1 hour and 15 minutes. It will be available back on this page to watch again on demand. And if you want to connect with either of our speakers, use the community link at the top of the page under attendees. And if they have made themselves visible, you can send them a little chat message through the conferencing platform. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of the conference.